Thank you very much for inviting me in this panel first. AfCoDD, thank you. I was really inspired by the whole theme of reimagining, rethinking, reorganizing, and remobilizing. So I give greetings from the African Union. I am Interim Director for the Africa Minerals Development Center, which is a specialized agency of the African Union. So I was really happy to hear Professor's lecture. It's really a time now that we have to rethink, really reimagine, not only on the debt, but everything is related, on financing for Africa in general. And that's where, you know, how they say, well, who pays the tune plays the I forgot what it is, but who reads the pipe plays whatever. But the point is that we need financing. As long as we depend on the West for financing, then our problems will not be resolved. So I was really happy to be here because financing is important. And Professor talked a lot about natural resources and how our minerals were extracted. And always, we have never really benefited from that extraction to this day. That's why my center was created, basically. Actually, we are implementing what we call the Africa Mining Vision, which was adopted by African heads of states and governments in 2009. And it's exactly what you mentioned, Professor, that it's the realization. There was a boom at the time, a commodity price boom at the time in 2009. But it was realized that, you know, it was now benefiting the people. And so it was divided. Africans came together, different institutions, different individuals. They came together for this vision. And basically, it's about development. It's about how to make sure that our minerals lead to sustainable development and inclusive growth. So we look at it from the whole value chain. We look at it from the revenue side, of course. That's the first thing. But as mentioned in the morning by everyone, there is illicit financial flows, 89 billion. So that's not really. And somebody I think it was Mr. Director here, who was saying that the cost of the risk perception is about 74 billion. I mean, these are numbers that we really need to really focus on. So basically, we are the ones developing developed countries. And historically, and I'm glad you mentioned the history, historically, colonialism, slavery, even if you go back, I mean, Africans and others were the ones who developed the other countries. So have we put that numbers there as well? So in a way, we talk about aid, but it's not really aid. It's about, and I want to make a disclaimer, I'm talking about as me, not as Africa Union. So basically, it's just asking what we were taking. I'm not being an advocate for that, but in general, when we talk about aid, we have to see it from this perspective. It's our own money. So basically, this is to start off, but maybe I'll come back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Je vais vous poser la même question, hein, Dr. Diagne. Que vous inspirez ce que a dit Monsieur le fondateur d'AfCoDD?
Merci beaucoup. Moi, en tout cas, j'ai beaucoup apprécié cette lecture, donc qui était d'un très haut niveau et très très enrichissante à la fois également. Il a beaucoup insisté sur le fait que, en fait, le problème que nous avons, nous, en tout cas dans nos pays, c'est un retard en termes de transformation de nos économies. Parce que peu importe tout ce qu'on fait, si on ne réussit pas, en tout cas, à transformer nos économies, on n'a pas des économies qui sont suffisamment résilientes pour pouvoir répondre aux chocs que nous subissons. C'est vrai qu'on a beaucoup parlé de tous ces chocs et de leur impact et également du poids de la dette, mais il faut également aussi reconnaître qu'il y a des efforts à faire en termes de transformation de nos économies. Et de ce point de vue, j'ai vraiment aimé ce focus qui a été fait, en tout cas au cours de la présentation du professeur. Parce qu'il est déplorable qu'on se mette qu'on soit toujours, en tout cas, au stade où on exporte encore des produits à l'état brut. C'est le cas de plusieurs pays. On va citer le cas de la Côte d'Ivoire, par exemple, avec le cacao. On sait que, bon, il y a eu des progrès qui ont été faits depuis, en tout cas, mais le fait est que il va falloir, en tout cas, faire plus d'efforts, en tout cas, dans ce sens-là, pour rendre nos économies beaucoup plus, en tout cas, résistantes aux différents chocs que nous subissons. Donc c'est une remarque, en tout cas, importante que j'ai eu à relever de la présentation donc du professeur. Voilà. Donc encore une fois, et pour ce qui est en tout cas de la dette à proprement parler, on en a besoin. On a besoin de s'endetter pour pouvoir financer le développement. Si vous le prenez à l'état individuel, si vous avez si vous souhaitez en tout cas implanter un business et donc en tirer profit, il va falloir voilà, faire recours à vos ressources propres, mais également à l'endettement. C'est inévitable. Ce qui est important, c'est ce qu'on en fait. Ça c'est extrêmement important. Ce qui est important, c'est ce qu'on fait de l'endettement. Si je prends encore l'exemple à titre individuel, si je m'endette et que j'utilise donc ces fonds-là pour me payer des vacances, naturellement, bon, dans des endroits paradisiaques, naturellement, donc, je n'aurai pas de répercussions intéressantes en termes de développement. Par contre, si j'utilise cet endettement-là pour créer des entreprises, créer de l'emploi, générer de la richesse, là, c'est différent. Donc c'est de ce point de vue, on peut constater. J'imagine que dans le public, il y a certainement des personnes qui peut-être avaient quitté le Sénégal et sont revenus plusieurs années après. Mais le constat est là. Il y a eu quand même beaucoup de changements. Et ça reflète un peu ce qu'on a fait en partie avec la dette. Donc c'est en termes de productivité de la dette, on peut dire que ce qui a été fait, en tout cas, est perceptible. Bien qu'il y a encore beaucoup à faire, ça il faut le reconnaître. Les crises nous ont servi, en tout cas, en tout cas, ont démontré quelque part qu'on a encore énormément à faire. Si on prend le cas de la crise de Covid, elle a donc éprouvé, par exemple, notre système de santé et montré que, en fait, il y a énormément de difficultés à ce niveau-là qu'il importe de relever. Donc, ça sert de leçon pour pouvoir donc anticiper et bien entrevoir le futur et pouvoir donc corriger toutes ces difficultés-là. Il y a également le risque qui plane, qui est celui donc lié au changement climatique qu'on subit déjà et qui va nécessiter donc également qu'on puisse donc agir et donc s'adapter. Voilà. Donc je pense que je vais m'arrêter là pour l'instant. Je vous remercie.
Alors justement, pour rebondir sur cette transformation de ressources premières qui est absolument nécessaire, vous avez cité la Côte d'Ivoire, il y a le Ghana à côté, les plus gros exportateurs, producteurs de cacao. Et alors quand on pense que l'économie du chocolat vaut environ 47 milliards de dollars par an, eh bien, sur une tablette de chocolat, environ 6% seulement revient aux producteurs. La plupart vivent encore sous le seuil de pauvreté, qui est environ $1,25. Donc, absolument, c'est une aberration. Il y a tout plein de secteurs comme ça qui touchent malheureusement encore les populations. Merci beaucoup de le mentionner. Vous parliez justement de l'audience. Alors je pense que c'est peut-être un bon moment justement pour faire appel à vous, à l'audience. Est-ce que vous avez des questions pour nos intervenants aujourd'hui? C'est l'occasion justement de les poser, ils sont là pour ça. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions dans l'audience? Ou bien vous êtes timide peut-être? Si vous avez une question, levez la main et puis un membre de l'équipe. Voilà, donc monsieur tout au fond, est-ce que quelqu'un peut lui apporter un micro? Veuillez vous lever, s'il vous plaît, vous présenter.
Thank you very much, madam. And I wish to thank the lecturer who was very good in giving us the real situation that we are living in. But you were asking whether we have a question. I think that's why people are not raising their hands, because mine is not a question. I just want to bring a comment here from what I just heard on the reaction with regard to the lecture. Yes, indeed, we need to transform the way we think our economies. But how much should we really rely on our own resources? How much should we really rely on our own resources? I'm asking this not to come back on what the lecturer said. I'm asking this because we tend to think that we can do otherwise. And I heard from the introductory words at the beginning of the conference that African solutions are not enough. I think maybe that's what we are getting wrong. We need to make African solutions to be enough. And I'm turning this into a question to ask the panelists, how can we do that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go straight to Yopa. What can we do? And I also want to mention as well that we are joined on the line all the way from Mauritius. Je vais passer en français, désolé. Je vais également mentionner que professeur Ramola Ramtohoul est finalement avec nous en virtuel depuis l'île Maurice. Mais tout de suite, j'aimerais aller vers vous pour rebondir sur ce que vient de dire ce monsieur. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire concrètement? Parce qu'on est ici finalement pour du concret.
If I understood the question correctly, the point is that we must make a distinction between financial resources which are required for the transformation process. Make a distinction with the resources that we have. That's our natural resource base. Like my colleague said, there's nothing wrong in borrowing. Absolutely nothing wrong with borrowing. You can borrow. And that's why I talked about East Africa Center now shifting. Because in the BRICS, for example, we have all these guys with a lot of money now. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and that. In fact, I heard that for Zambia, Saudi Arabia was probably going to write off, bail Zambia out completely for the total debt. That means they actually have a lot of resources. But would that means that financial resources are available somewhere. Can we use that for transformation? What is our biggest problem? Our underlying problem is that we must use our own raw materials and not send them outside. But to do that, we need money, we need resources. We don't have that. We can borrow or get money from Saudi Arabia or from anybody, anywhere, so that we can transform this, so that eventually we don't sell our raw materials to the relationship we've had over the past 100 years. Okay? So I think that distinction is important, that we can borrow resources, but we must use them for our transformation. And the African continent free trade area is the one which is a good buffer for us, because people always say, oh, you can't produce your capital goods because you have a small market. You can't produce products of copper because you have a small market. Forget about the North. Forget about it. We have the African continent where we can actually develop our own market. So I think the important thing is that we use the resources prudently for our transformation process. I think that's quite key. But the fundamental point is that we cannot be sending raw material out to this is what is underdeveloping. That has to stop. And
Yes.
I'm glad my sister is here, that efforts are being made.
She can't wait to comment.
So if I may, so thank you very much. So I like the question, should we rely on our own resources? Apart from the Africa Mining Vision, we also have the African Union Commodity Strategy. I know we are another strategy, you might say. We have the African Continental Free Trade Area. And it's really, and now we at the next Africa Climate Summit will be launching our African Green Minerals Strategy. It's very specific. It's about not exporting raw materials. So we look at it, as I said, from the whole value chain and value addition. And if you talk about cash money, it's about the pie. You know, if we look at it just from the taxation part or the fiscal, as we mentioned, there's illicit financial flow, there's all of this. So we are focusing on expanding the pie because the market, as you mentioned, if you just raw material exporting is very small. I'm going to take the example of cobalt and the electric vehicle value chain. If you only export raw material, it's 11 billion, the market. If you go to you add value, you go to the precursor. The DRC and Zambia are doing it there's a compelling study that was done. It's 271 billion. And if you go through the whole electrical vehicle market, you go to 6 trillion, 7 trillion. So that's the kind of market we're targeting. And that's how you get the financing. You don't, I mean, of course you need to borrow at some point, but the point we're trying to make is that you can transform just by these ones because you added value. Of course, I like the practicality of it. The Africa Green Mineral Strategy we're having and the commodity strategy puts it, I mean, you need the skills, you need the competencies, you need the technology. What does it take? It gives you really what it takes to go to that step of value addition. Because the West is telling us we don't have the comparative advantage. But, you know, and I like what you said about history. Historically, we used to add value. We used to add value before, after the colonization, after they told us that they're the ones adding value to the copper, even to the bronze, you know, the bronze. So they killed the artisanal mining, which artisanal is really skills, but that was killed back then. So we have to think about it. So they became the value adders, if I may say so, and they take the market out, and that's how they develop. So we're trying to get it back. And as you mentioned, there are some external factors that really sometimes impede us. We have to be very conscious, and that's why I like this conversation, because it's a difficult one to have when it's governments. But I'm glad here, but because we don't have we have the regional economic communities. We have SADC very much so on regional harmonization using the AfCFTA, but at the end of the day, countries are sovereign and they go and negotiate. And then, you know, they think they get the best deal, but they don't. So we don't have control of that. Even the AMV, it's not mandatory. So this kind of conversation need to be had. And we need to have an Africa Union position on this. But we can't. We have 55 countries, and I'm sitting at the African Union.
Okay, so, we have the foundation, and actually this afternoon and during the next sessions, we'll have the opportunity to go further. But I really want avant qu'on se quitte, excusez-moi, je reste en anglais. Donc avant de se quitter, allons directement à l'île Maurice, car nous avons la professeure Ramola Ramtoul, qui est, je le répète, maître de conférence en sociologie et études du genre à l'université de Maurice. Elle est avec nous en ligne et il serait bien d'entendre ce qu'elle a à dire. Professeur, est-ce que vous nous entendez?
Oui, je
Soyez
vous entends
la bienvenue.
Très bien. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, on vous voit bien, on vous entend. Alors, qu'est-ce que vous inspirent les échanges que vous avez entendus?
because that will go faster. First, I just want to thank the organizers, especially Jason, Ebrima, for inviting me to the conference, and my apologies for not being able to attend in person. I'm just overloaded with deadlines over here. Following the very comprehensive keynote or lecture given by Mr. Upa, I mean, he's covered the whole overview of the debt crisis in Africa with a very full theoretical analysis. I just wanted to add a little bit on that, because most of the focus of the discussions were on the economy, on trade, on resources, which are basically key to the debt problem, but also looking at what can we do as civil society, as NGOs, how can we plug in, and also looking at the social sector, which is where I work on primarily. So like my focus will be on how NGOs, how civil society can push towards a kind of revisiting of priorities. And here my focus is, as I said, more on the social, because we've seen, if we go through down history, how the debt problem, whether it was through structural adjustment and further depreciations of the currencies of African countries or devaluations, and this is compounded with the more recent crisis that we had, COVID, and then the war in Ukraine. But basically, the effects on the social services, on public services, on the welfare state on the continent have been this has been documented, the effects on the welfare state, and this has long-term implications. And the systematic decline in the quality of social services available to citizens also has a significant gender dimension, because it's affected women and girls on the continent severely. And we see that, for example, some figures that I have, like in 2019, we've got like 25 African countries, out of which 16 spent more on debt repayment than on education, health, and social protection altogether. So just to show how the debt problem is impacting on critical areas on the continent: education, health, and social protection. And I just wanted to emphasize that these have a significant gender dimension, which has implications towards gender-based violence, the education, empowerment of women and girls, and even gender equality on the continent. So here, like the debt has led to reduction of government expenditure in these sectors, and this has had a disproportionate impact on women, and this has even been documented by the World Bank. So where can we plug in at this level is probably to push our governments, our policymakers to involve women, especially whether it's gender experts or those with expertise in gender budgeting, in gender, to be involved in decision making on public debt, so that whatever decisions are taken at that level, they're not gender blind, and there's some kind of provision made so that the all the good work that's been done on the continent towards gender equality, women empowerment is not erased because of increasing debt, because these crises that we've had in the world, we thought COVID was over and we can recover. Then the Ukraine war came. We don't know what else is going to come. That's one area, the gender dimension. The other one I wanted to highlight, given that I'm also in the higher education sector, is the effects of these debts on higher education, especially public universities on the continent, because increasingly we find that the public universities are reeling under debts, and students are also struggling. But also what's even more severe is that there's very little investment in these universities, which has implications on research and development, and we're talking about innovation. And we've seen what has happened. I mean, what is keeping Africa behind, and why can't we catch up with technology or have our own technology and our own R&Ds, not enough is being invested in research and development and in our universities. So this is an area which we have to be extra careful that it's not again sacrificed. So my whole argument is that there needs to be a shifting of priorities, and we try to think more long term, and not to see like the social sector as just it used to be seen as a high consumer or a bit of a burden of public resources, but to focus on the long term effects in these sectors. So I think I will leave my intervention at that.
Merci.
And then if there are questions.
Merci énormément,
Thank you.
professeur. Merci également de votre patience, d'être resté avec nous en ligne. Alors malheureusement, nous arrivons à la fin de notre discussion aujourd'hui, enfin ce matin du moins, parce que sachez bien sûr que la discussion continuera tout à l'heure au travers de plusieurs panels et puis bien sûr au cours de ces 2 derniers jours. Mais avant de partir, je retourne très rapidement vers vous, vous trois, pour vos 3 mots-clés à retenir de la discussion aujourd'hui. Donc, très brièvement, 3 mots à retenir.
C'est pas simple. C'est pas simple. 3 mots, bon, moi je dirais bon, la transformation, bien entendu, une transformation de nos économies. Deuxième mot, je dirais un plaidoyer pour un allègement de la dette. Et également, donc, investir, en tout cas, adopter une politique d'endettement qui serait prudente, hein, qui serait beaucoup plus, donc ce serait un endettement prudent, donc comme 3e mot. Mais en fait, je voulais juste ajouter une autre difficulté qui est malheureusement commune à tous les pays africains et qui n'a pas été abordée jusqu'ici. C'est le poids extrêmement important du secteur informel dans nos économies. En termes de mobilisation de ressources, ça pose énormément de problèmes. Donc ça aussi, c'est également un problème à prendre en compte parce que ça pèse également assez lourdement sur l'endettement dont on discute aujourd'hui. Voilà, merci. Pour monopoliser la parole, voilà, merci.
Donc,
donc 3 mots-clés, s'il vous plaît. 3 keywords.
Value addition, very much important to get value accruing on the continent. The second one would be innovation and thinking outside of the box in every, and having our own narratives as Africa. It's like the delinking you're talking about, delinking, but not completely. We have to live with our realities, but the world is changing, so we have to think, what is Africa's narrative? What do we want out of it? Now we have all the information. Before we didn't. So that's and being bold about it. The third one would be bold, because we have the resources, we have the people, we have the skills. We just need to be bold and believe in ourselves.
Believe in ourselves, absolutely. And le mot de la fin pour vous, Opa.
Okay. I think the fact, from what I've been hearing, we can change, right? And if we talk about mobilization, we need to be clear what we need to be mobilizing for. And that if we have a clear idea of what our constraints are, not just taken from today and yesterday, we need to understand that we are in a structural fix, right? There are structures which keep us there. And I'm really happy that the demonstration from my sister here, she was pointing out extremely good figures about value added. This is so crucial to the continent. If we don't do that, we'll be dead.
Thank you. Merci à tous. Merci de nous avoir suivis donc ce matin pour le coup d'envoi donc de cette 3e conférence sur la dette et le développement. Merci à vous trois d'être avec nous. Merci également au professeur Ramtoul qui nous a rejoints depuis l'île Maurice. Il est l'heure à présent de marquer la pause déjeuner. J'espère que vous la trouverez délicieuse. Quant à moi, je vous donne rendez-vous à 14h dans cette même salle pour la suite des programmes. À tout à l'heure.